Baiyun City is in the west of Pulau country, and 100 kilometers outside the city is a desert. Outside the city and inside the city are two worlds. The outside of the city is desolate and the inside of the city is like spring all year round. Baiyun City, Xianmiao Courtyard, on Qingxi Square. 3,000 immortal seedlings gathered together, each half the size of a person, and they were all green children. Master Ge of the Xianmiao Academy, standing in front of the square, slowly opened his mouth. Today is the day of the official teaching. All immortal seedlings should practice diligently, and strive to bring qi into the body as soon as possible. The top 10 immortal seedlings who are the fastest to bring qi into the body will be rewarded with medicinal pills. His voice was soft, but it spread all over the square and landed in the ears of the immortals, as if talking face to face. Not only the articulation is clear, but also has the effect of shocking the mind, making people unable to concentrate. The immortal seedlings' stern faces, but their eyes are full of longing. The medicinal pill reward that Master Ge said was an extremely rare and precious thing, enticing to them. The teaching begins. Every immortal seedlings, line up according to their attributes. Under the orders of the immortal masters, the 3,000 immortal seedlings immediately lined up into 5 teams. Metal, wood, water, fire, soil, and all 5 elements. Chen Jingzai was wearing a white immortal seedling robe and stood in the team of earth attribute immortal seedlings. His face was indifferent, and his eyes that were as bright as stars looked towards the front of the team. In front of the immortal master, there are 3 children of his size. Ku is 12 or 13 years old, no different from everyone else. But they don't need to line up, and one by one, their chins were raised, their faces proud. Don't look at it, Jingzai. Those 3 are all geniuses with immortal bones, and they will definitely enter the immortal sect. We still put our practice down to the ground. Ling Wuqi, who was behind him, patted Chen Jingzai on the shoulder and said in a low voice. I know. Chen Jingzai said lightly, and then withdrew his gaze. There was a hint of confusion in his eyes. Soul has been in this world for 12 years, and he thought that he could rise rapidly with the legacy of his previous life. I never thought that there are immortals in this world, who can see for a long time, move mountains and overturn seas, and change the color of heaven and earth. He has no memory of his past life, so he can only do nothing about it, and he obediently lies dormant. At the age of 6, he was sent by his biological father to the fairy seedling test. Fortunately, the spiritual root was detected. Although it is the 3 spiritual roots of gold, earth, and fire, it is also qualified to become an immortal seedling. Suddenly, the small family has undergone tremendous changes. Originally the father of Xiao Zhao Kui, he became the county magistrate of the county government. The Pulau Kingdom also has gold and silver rewards, land grants, and tax-free benefits. Chen Jingzai also became the only immortal seedling in the county, which was a blockbuster. But he thought that spiritual roots were rare, and immortal seedlings were not easy. Who would have thought that after Xianmiao tried, he was sent to Baiyun City, only to know that this was not the case. The Pulau Kingdom conducts the immortal seedling test every year. At most, you can get nearly 10,000 immortal seedlings a year. Nearly 1,000 at least a year. In the year that Chen Jingzai conducted the immortal seedling test, he collected a total of 3,000 immortal seedlings. Not bad or bad, the quantity is normal. But among the 3,000 immortal seedlings, but there are also 3 seedlings with immortal bones, which is extraordinary. Chen Jingzai can still recall that when it was determined that the 3 immortal seedlings had immortal bones, how rude was Master Ge. That surprised gesture deeply hurt his heart. It would be great if I had an immortal bone. Chen Jingzai clenched his fists subconsciously, and there was a hint of unwillingness in his eyes. Cultivation of immortals pays attention to qualifications. What is qualification? Spiritual root is talent, immortal bone is talent, and it boils down to talent. Chen Jingzai has 3 spiritual roots, his aptitude is not bad or bad, and he belongs to the middle class. At least it is stronger than the 5 elements miscellaneous spirit root and better than the 4 spiritual root. But it's not as good as double spiritual roots. It is even more difficult to compare the existence of Shan Lingan, known as Tian Lingan. Incomparable to the above and more than the inferior, in the end it can only be mediocre and average. And the immortal bone is an existence comparable to the heavenly spirit root. In the Xianmiao Academy in Baiyun City, there has been no Tianling root for 300 years. There are quite a lot of double spiritual roots. For example, there are 6 double spiritual roots in this session. They were at the forefront of the team and were the first to receive the skill. It doesn't matter if you don't have an immortal bone, not even a double spiritual root. This made Chen Jingzai feel depressed, a little aggrieved and uncomfortable. When he entered the Xianmiao courtyard, he didn't dare to relax for a moment, because he was forced by his aptitude. He didn't want to be left behind, so he naturally had to bear the pressure. The team moved forward slowly, and after a stick of incense, it was finally Chen Jingzai's turn. In front of him, there are 3 books, each corresponding to the 3 martial arts. Do you know all 3 of the rock gangster technique, the lava technique, and the mud flow technique? The immortal master asked. I already know, Chen Jingzai said. Disciple chooses the art of Yan Gang. Once selected, it cannot be changed. The immortal master said flatly. Disciple understands. Chen Jingzai respectfully saluted, and then took the book. Introducing Qi into the body is the beginning of cultivating immortals. Jade slips are precious, and since it is impossible to record the art of absorbing Qi into the body, Chen Jingzai was not in a hurry to cultivate, but stood aside and waited for Ling Wuqi. Ling Wuqi was a friend Chen Jingzai had made in Baiyun City for 6 years. The two were in the same house in the Xianmiao courtyard, and they had a good relationship. He was already in line behind Chen Jingzai, so he naturally received the Kung Fu very quickly. I chose mud flow art, how about you? Ling Wuqi asked excitedly. Yan Gang Ju. Chen Jingzai replied. Although there is no accident, you are really stubborn. Ling Wuqi said with emotion. The 3 martial arts are all based on earth attributes. Yan Gang Ju is a pure earth attribute, and the difficulty is the highest. The lava technique is a dual attribute technique of earth and fire. Yu reading www.yuuganju.com. Mud flow is a dual attribute exercise of soil and water. Ling Wuqi chose the mud flow art because he is the spiritual root of the 3 elements of gold, earth, and water. The mud flow trick is very suitable for Ling Wuqi. Chen Jingzai has 3 spiritual roots of gold, fire, and earth, so he can choose lava tactics. Entering the Xianmiao Academy, 3 years of learning Chinese characters and 3 years of reading scriptures. We have long grasped the common sense of cultivating immortals. The immortal master once said that specialization is the key to cultivation. Chen Jingzai said indifferently. Single attribute skills, the spiritual power that is cultivated is naturally pure. But it's slow. Don't forget, we only have 4 years. If after 4 years, I can't break through to the Qi training realm, I won't be selected by the immortal sect. At that time, what's the difference between knocking down the mortal world? Ling Wuqi reminded softly. The immortals of the Immortal Miao Academy have a 16-year-old exam. After they are 16 years old, an immortal master from the immortal sect will come to accept their apprentices. Only those who reach the standard of cultivation or have qualified qualifications can be taken away. Those 3 immortal seedlings with immortal bones, even if they don't practice, they can definitely join the immortal sect. Their immortal seedlings with lean spiritual roots are different. There are too many people and there is too much competition. If you don't practice well, you will be eliminated. The eliminated Xianmiao, the Pulao Congress was called up. Although the things that were rewarded in the past will not be taken back, they will eventually lose face. Most importantly, he lost the chance to join the immortal sect. I have my own plans. Let's go. Go back first and recite the exercises. Chen Jingzai turned and left. Ling Yuqi quickly followed. Baiyun City is prosperous because of Xianmiao Academy. The 4 seasons in the city are like spring, because of the existence of Xianmiao Academy. I heard that it is the method of the immortal master, but ordinary people don't know how. Xianmiaowen covers a very large area, and it is easy to get lost if you are not familiar with it. Chen Jingzai spent 6 full years in Xianmiaowen. Taking out the spirit of the college entrance examination in the previous life, he also knew the Xianmiao Academy very well. He worked hard and became a role model for Ling Yuqi. But in the eyes of others it was different. If you focus too much on your studies and ignore your whole body, you will naturally look out of place. Chen Jingzai didn't care. He and Ling Yuqi moved to a remote house. In a somewhat dilapidated courtyard, Chen Jingzai and Ling Yuqi lived in it. There are many houses in the Xianmiao courtyard, because every year Xianmiao will come. Every year, there are immortal masters from the immortal sect who take away immortal seedlings. Naturally, there are many empty houses left. As long as you apply and report in advance, there will be no trouble in changing houses. But in the Immortal Miao Academy, there are no domestic servants. The Xianmiao Academy is responsible for the daily meals, and Xianmiao takes care of the rest. Chen Jingzai has past life memories, so his personal life is naturally not difficult. Ling Yuqi also has the ability to live independently under his influence. The two returned to the house, and they first boiled to quench their thirst. Then they went back to their rooms and closed the door tightly, and then they started to recite the exercises. Entered the Xianmiao Academy at the age of 6, and studied for 6 years just for this moment. The immortal seedlings reject literacy and hyphenation, reading, and schoolwork, it's all for the sake of reading the secrets. This is laying the foundation for the immortals. Chen Jingzai has realized this since he joined the Xianmiao Academy. Never relax. This time, it finally got his wish. The book was placed on the table, and Chen Jingzai was slightly calm. After his heartbeat returned to normal, he opened the book and began to memorize the rock gang secret art. After one time, he read it silently again, trying to make sure there were no mistakes or omissions. After doing this 3 or 5 times, Chen Jingzai wrote it down thoroughly. But at this moment, his head suddenly dizzy. A pain like a needle stick resurfaced in the depths of my mind. Although it was fleeting, it also made Chen Jingzai feel thrilling. When he came back to his senses, his eyes suddenly changed. Cultivation technique, rock gang ju advantages, practicing spiritual power is pure, mellow, and has a solid foundation. Disadvantages, it is difficult to sense the earth element force, it is difficult to cultivate, and it is not easy to get started. Vulnerability, dig a hole under the root of an old tree to bury yourself, and your practice takes off. A faint white font appeared on the secret book of Yan Gang Ju, and Chen Jingzai looked at it blankly. System. He whispered. There was no response, there was no ding in his ears, and there was no panel in front of him. The 4-line font even slowly dissipated because he lost his attention. Chen Jingzai took a deep breath to calm himself down. His face was expressionless, but his heart was boiling. He knew that he was special. Since his soul penetrated this world, he must have special abilities. Although it's a bit of a pity that it's not a system, this kind of talent is not bad. Chen Jingzai attributes it to talent, whether it is or not, that's what he thinks. Not in a hurry to cultivate, he got up and went directly to Ling Yuqi's room. Did you remember it? Ling Yuqi asked with a smile. Naturally, Chen Jingzai nodded, let's exchange and see. Okay. Ling Yuqi refused. The Xianmiao Academy doesn't care about the immortals cultivating each other's skills. The main reason is that these key introducing techniques are not dangerous. Previously, Chen Jingzai had proposed to see each other's skills. Ling Yuqi didn't think there was anything wrong. With the secret book in hand, Chen Jingzai sat on the side, staring at the mud flow formula. Exercise, mud flow technique advantages, easy to get started, quick recovery. Disadvantage, it takes time to carve out the impure spiritual energy. Vulnerability, 3 loads of river sand are filled into wooden barrels, and the water passes through the abdomen. The practice is more effective. 4 lines of faint handwriting appeared in his eyes, and a smile appeared on Chen Jingzai's face. Sure enough, it's a talent, not a flash in the pan. And there is no need to memorize it, as soon as you see it, the formula will appear. At this moment, the heart he had been holding on, finally let go. Now that the talent has been determined, it is time to demonstrate whether the talent is accurate. Chen Jingzai didn't care about the merits of the exercises. His eyes are on vulnerabilities, a category he is very familiar with. Isn't this a bug? He smiled inwardly. Although he was not a programmer in his previous life, he had played games and was an old rookie. I have also tried things like card bugs. Sure enough, it is much more profound than my mud flow art. Ling Wuqi shook his head after reading the art and said, it is also much more difficult to cultivate. Jingzai, why don't you practice mud flow art too? I don't have the spiritual root of the water system, so the mud flow trick is useless to me. Chen Jingzai put down the secret book. It's a pity, Ling Wuqi said, the choice of the Kung Fu formula is a must, or we can find other immortal seedlings to exchange. There are many people who want to choose the lava technique. There's no need. Chen Jingzai took the secret manual of Yan Gangju in his hand, that's it. Don't try to persuade me. Now that you have memorized the magic formula, then prepare to practice. You are too stubborn. Ling Wuqi said helplessly. His good friend, everything is good, but he is too stubborn, making people helpless. After leaving Ling Wuqi's room, Chen Jingzai did not practice cultivation. He found tools and started to choose places according to the loopholes in the exercises. Dig a hole under the roots of an old tree to bury yourself. Chen Jingzai walked around and found an old dead tree in the backyard of the house. Reading www.yuyuganshu.com. The old tree is dead, but the roots are still there. Without hesitation, he started digging the soil to get the roots out. In the end, I didn't expect it to be so difficult to dig a hole, especially the old tree roots. It was not until it was dark that he successfully dug out all the roots with the help of Ling Wuqi. What is this going to do? Ling Wuqi asked while sitting on the ground, sweating profusely. I'm going to practice here. Chen Jingzai didn't hide it. Are you crazy? Ling Wuqi stared at him with wide eyes. It's difficult to get started with the Yan Gangju, so I have to find a way. Chen Jingzai said, since it's an earth attribute exercise, it always makes sense to practice in an earthen pit, right? There's a fart truth, if it really works, how come no one knows it? Ling Wuqi asked. Don't mind me, Chen Jingzai waved, just bury me. He said and jumped directly into the dirt pit, and then put the dirt into the dirt pit with both hands. Ling Wuqi had nothing to say. He knew that Chen Jingzai could not be persuaded, and Chen Jingzai always had some fantastic ideas. No matter whether he succeeds or not, let him do his wish first, and then naturally he won't be fooling around. Ling Wuqi thought so, and started to act. Finally, the soil reached Chen Jingzai's chest. Only then did he nod his head in satisfaction, and let Ling Wuqi cultivate by himself. Are you all right? Ling Wuqi asked worriedly. I'll yell if something happens. Chen Jingzai said, go back to your room first. Ling Wuqi nodded, got up and left. Seeing Ling Wuqi closing the door, Chen Jingzai breathed a sigh of relief. Then he closed his eyes and started cultivating according to the content of Yan Gangju. In the pit, Chen Jingzai exposed his head, closed his eyes and started to run the Kung Fu. He was clearly cultivating the rock gang art for the first time. However, in Zancha Kung Fu, the spirit root trembled. This tremor was indescribable, and Chen Jingzai only felt that his 5 senses were instantly enlarged. He, who was familiar with the scriptures, immediately understood that this was a sign of the beginning of the practice. Caused to enter the body, to put it bluntly, it is to sense the vitality of heaven and earth. With the help of the spiritual root, the vitality of the corresponding attributes of the outside world is drawn into the body and slowly refined. It's just that ordinary people cultivate, and it is difficult for the spiritual roots to resonate, and they cannot be stimulated independently. That's why we need a technique to try to actively control or stimulate the spiritual roots. A cup of tea can make the spiritual root tremble, and it is not easy to stimulate the spiritual root. Chen Jingzai clearly remembered what the immortal master said, that this is an abnormality that can only be experienced by Tianligan. And endured his inner excitement, Chen Jingzai realized his vitality with the help of his enlarged five senses. At this time, he was sensitive, and in the tremor of his spiritual roots, the sound of blood flowing in the body can be heard. I can hear the beating of the internal organs, the beating of the heart, and feel the touch of the skin and soil on the body surface. As he continued to activate the Yan Gangju, energy soon rushed towards him in the pit. Like gurgling water, like misty fog, what he sensed was not real. I only felt that the body surface was cold, and then the warm qi quickly entered the body. The pores opened instantly, and a cocky yellow vitality poured into every part of the body between breaths. These vital energies rapidly circulate in the body with the Yan Gang art. In a trance, Chen Jingzai sensed that a large amount of earthy yellow vitality was refined into his danshan. After entering the danshan, a stream of pure earth spirit energy rose from the danshan. Along the meridians, it flows rapidly in all directions. There are more and more earth yellow yuan forces, and they are absorbed by the advancing earth spirit energy. The earth spirit power grew rapidly, and after flowing through the meridians, it began to open the orifices. When the first ray of spiritual power appeared, it proved that Chen Jingzai had successfully drawn qi into his body. After walking around the sky, he entered the first level of qi training. After opening the 10 major acupoints and 36 auxiliary orifices, he entered the second level of qi training. After dawn, Chen Jingzai was already on the third level of qi training. There are 20 main acupoints in the body, and all 7 Taituo auxiliary orifices are opened. The spiritual power runs smoothly, and it can move forward slowly without deliberate guidance. After entering the danshan, it automatically nourishes all parts of the body. After the first rays of sunlight appeared, Chen Jingzai broke free from the soil and jumped out of the pit. Looking back, the earth pit at this time has lost its vitality. Not only did it become dry and yellow, but it felt like grit when you squeezed it. After one night's effort, I entered the third floor of qi training, which is just a dirt pit. Chen Jingzai felt it was very worthwhile, and he quickly entered the room to take a bath in a cheerful mood. After the spiritual power is born in the body, it continuously refines the body with the continuous operation. At this moment, he was covered in greasy dirt and had a faint stench. He loves being clean, but he can't stand it. After cleaning up his body and putting on a new Xianmia robe, Chen Jingzai sat cross-legged on the bed. After the qi is drawn into the body, it is the 9 heavens of qi training. If it is said that the introduction of qi into the body is the beginning of the difference between immortals and mortals, then practicing qi zhongdian is the beginning of ascending to the sky. Just because of the qi realm, one can cultivate spiritual power, strengthen the body, and even cast spells. Since entering the Xianmiao Academy, Chen Jingzai has been training himself a lot. According to the experience of the previous life, running, squats, push-ups, etc. are not put down. Don't look at his thin body, white and tender skin, but he is actually undressed and fleshy. Now it is different. After the birth of spiritual power, his physical body has grown in all aspects. In the past, he was only 12 years old. Even with exercise, it was very difficult to dig a hole. Now he can jump up from the pit. Both strength and speed surpass that of ordinary adults, and their physique is even stronger. This is the benefit of spiritual power. Spiritual power is more mysterious than the true qi in the novel. After all, it refines the vitality of heaven and earth. I only cultivate the earth attribute, and my spiritual power also accounts for the word pure, which is why I have such an improvement. The choice is indeed not wrong, the immortal master didn't lie to me, and the earth spirit root is indeed more prominent. It's just that it's not easy to do next. Chen Jingzai murmured in his heart, and his face showed contemplation. It stands to reason that if he entered the third floor of Qi training overnight, he would definitely shock the Xianmiao Academy. But this is a trick, not by virtue of one's own qualifications. After being shocked, it will inevitably lead to inquiries, and it will definitely not escape the investigation. What's the point? Cheap other fairy seedlings? Boost their strength? If other immortal seedlings quickly cultivate the rock formation technique, they will be in big trouble for him. These immortal seedlings are all his competitors, isn't this stupid? Chen Jingzai shook his head secretly. He is not stupid, he does not do this. So the progress of cultivation must be concealed, even Ling Wuqi has to hide a layer. After making this decision, Chen Jingzai felt more relaxed. After a while, Ling Wuqi brought food back. Enter Chen Jingzai's room and enjoy it with him. Jingzai, how do you feel? Ling Wuqi asked. Perhaps the pit was not dug properly, and I was buried uncomfortably. I didn't enter until the middle of the night. Chen Jingzai said while eating, how's your progress? Hey, the mud flow formula really suits me very well, Ling Wuqi smiled brightly. Last night, I was lucky enough to enter deep meditation and realized Yuan Li. Although I didn't introduce Qi into my body, it's only been a few days. Congratulations! Chen Jingzai said, slightly surprised and happy. Old actor. Although it's a happy event, don't worry too much, Ling Wuqi said bitterly. I heard the news that the three geniuses have entered the realm of Qi training, and the strongest person is already on the second level of Qi training. Really? Chen Jingzai remained calm. Isn't Master Ge ecstatic? I heard that. I laughed a few times, Ling Wuqi sighed. Let's not talk about the three geniuses, but the 6 double spiritual roots. Last night, they successfully introduced Qi into the body, but they didn't move Zhou Tian. Why are they so fast? Chen Jingzai frowned. It doesn't make sense. I don't even look at the house they live in, Ling Wuqi said helplessly, but the beautiful bamboo house near the immortal master. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com heard that the concentration of vitality is astonishing. This is an invisible benefit. Don't think too much, Chen Jingzai said after a moment of silence. Individuals have their own fate, and they are just one step ahead of me. It should be noted that the road to immortality is not one step and one step. I know, but being selected into the immortal sect is what matters, so, hee. Ling Wuqi laughed. Look at what I brought you. You have to thank me. Lava art. Chen Jingzai looked at the book in front of him, slightly surprised. I changed it for you on purpose, are you surprised? Ling Wuqi said with a smile. You exchanged it with mud flow tactics. Chen Jingzai frowned. The books need to be returned. I know, Ling Wuqi said with a smile. It wasn't exchanged with mud flow tactics, but bought with money. When I went to pick up the meal, I found out that someone did this kind of business yesterday. Chen Jingzai frowned slightly, but quickly relaxed again. He knew that Ling Wuqi's family was rich and prosperous. He was only 6 years old when he came, but he was covered in gold and jewels. Although these are useless in the Xianmiao Academy, they have been kept hidden by Ling Wuqi. And the people who sell Kung Fu, I think they are those with the 5 elements and the 4 spiritual roots. They have already given up on entering the immortal sect, and they just want to take other paths by selling the secrets. The Xianmiao Academy does not prohibit the circulation of Kung Fu in the Xianmiao Academy, but it prohibits outside transmission. If the immortals cannot join the immortal sect, they will be taken away by the Pulao Kingdom. Before that, their memorized skills will be cleaned up. Only the one you choose to cultivate is left. Selling skills is nothing more than wanting to save gold and silver, and by the way, become attached to many immortals. Seeing each other again in the future is the difference between immortals and mortals. There is also a reason for this skill. After using the meal, Chen Jingzai put away the lava art. He is going to concentrate on cultivating the rock gang art, and he will say it after he has reached consummation. The pure spiritual power has brought him a great improvement, and he cannot give up. However, Ling Wuoqui's kindness could not be ignored. So he didn't go to the old tree roots to dig a hole that morning. Instead, he brought Ling Wuoqui with tools and went to the river in the backyard to dig sand. The Xianmiao courtyard is located in Baiyun City, occupying the largest area, and there is a river running through it. There are tens of thousands of fairy seedlings living in the courtyard. From Chen Jingzai's point of view, Xianmiao Academy is more like a residential school. It's still the one that lived for 10 years. The Xianmiao who entered the Xianmiao Academy in the same year lived in the same area. Between different areas, there are different immortal masters guarding them. They will not mix with each other, let alone cross-border behavior. Immortal seedlings in the same area must not fight to cause trouble, otherwise there will be heavy penalties. In the first half of the year, an immortal master had already picked up the immortal seedlings. So Chen Jingzai and Ling Wuoqui are now 7th grade immortals. The immortal seedlings who have just been taught the art, the immortal masters will not care too much. Therefore, watching the two little guys carrying the guy even on their shoulders came to the river, the immortal masters don't pay attention, as long as they don't fall into the river, there is no problem. Is it really necessary, Jingzai? Ling Wuoqui asked while pretending to be Hesha. If you want to speed up your practice, just listen to me. Chen Jingzai said. But I haven't seen your method work. Ling Wuoqui said with a bitter face. You don't believe me. Chen Jingzai's eyes flew like knives. I don't believe who would believe it. Ling Wuoqui immediately called out. The friend who grew up together for 6 years, Ling Wuoqui definitely believed. But what he believed was not Chen Jingzai's method, but Chen Jingzai's stubbornness. Knowing how to argue is useless, Ling Wuoqui can only work hard. Fortunately, the two of them dug river sand together, and the speed was not slow. Moreover, Chen Jingzai is now practicing the 3rd level of Qi. Although, in order not to be discovered by the immortal master, he did not mobilize the spiritual power in his body. But just the improved physical fitness is much stronger than before. Therefore, it was just a back and forth, and he and Ling Wuoqui completed the task. Go back to the house. Chen Jingzai had no shortage of orders, and poured 3 tons of river sand into the bathtub. The river sand was half submerged in an instant, and then Chen Jingzai let Ling Wuoqui wear his pants in again. Ling Wuoqui didn't twist, and sat cross-legged on the river sand with a loveless face. Chen Jingzai began to pour in clean water, and stopped when the water overflowed Chen Jingzai's belly button. Let Ling Wuoqui cultivate well, Chen Jingzai closed the door and turned to leave. The house is remote and no one will disturb it, and it is even less likely that immortal seedlings will forcefully enter it. This is a big taboo. So Chen Jingzai left with confidence, and was going to look for old tree roots elsewhere. Old tree roots are hard to find, especially dead trees. Geographical location is also very important, it is best not to attract attention. Chen Jingzai had a choice, he went to some dilapidated houses on purpose. Xianmiao are all children and naturally like good houses. The dilapidated house, no one wants to live in it, naturally there is no one. Chen Jingzai walked around and found 3 old tree roots with joy. He was going to come over to dig a pit at night, so he didn't need to bring Ling Wuoqui this time. With his current strength, digging a pit is not a piece of cake. Looking at the sky, he turned around to get some food. When he came back, Ling Wuoqui was still cultivating. Chen Jingzai smiled after sensing it carefully. It's already done. He clearly sensed the influx of vitality into Ling Wuoqui's body. Although it is not as pure as a single attribute cloud qi, but the amount is large. It is also a pleasant surprise. After eating slowly, he warmed up Ling Wuqi's portion. He just returned to the room, took out the lava formula and recited it silently. Technique, lava technique advantages, the main burst, the body quenching effect is good. Disadvantages, the meridians are easily damaged, and the cultivation risk is high. Vulnerability, the method of steaming, safe and smooth, quenches the meridians, strengthens the muscles and bones. Chen Jingzai looked at the loophole of the lava technique with a strange expression. The so-called method of steaming is the method of steaming. Boil water in a pot, put a steamer on the water, and when people are in the steamer, the steam is steaming. This method sounds unreliable, but it is very attractive. Tempering the meridians and strengthening the muscles and bones, these two effects are extraordinary. Practicing the qi state is nothing more than accelerating the refining of yuan force and opening the acupoints in the body. If the meridians are tough and strong, the speed of spiritual power will also increase. If the muscles and bones are strong, they can withstand more yuan force, and the refining speed can be accelerated. And the skills that can improve the physique and meridians are extremely rare in the qi refining realm. The rock gang art he cultivated only accounted for a lot of purity, but in this respect it was much worse. I originally thought that the lava technique was not suitable for me, but I didn't want to miss the treasure. Others practice the two arts together, they should be asking for hardships, but they are different. Maybe you can find more secrets and try them out. Chen Jingzai thought to himself. The more he thought about it, the more reasonable he felt. The teachings of the immortal master are naturally indistinguishable, and he does appreciate the benefits of single attribute cultivation. But the problem is that he has a special talent for immortal cultivation, so he can cultivate quickly. Try some more exercises, find the best way to practice, and keep trying and making mistakes. For others, it is a waste of time, but for him, it is a great road. Realizing this, Chen Jingzai almost rushed out of the door in excitement. Fortunately, his mind was firm, so he finally restrained his mind, meditated silently, and thought to himself. Until the golden crow west fell, Chen Jingzai finally recovered completely and had a plan. At this time, Ling Wuqi's cheers were also heard from the other room. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Jingzai, Jingzai, I succeeded, ha ha ha. Ling Wuqi rushed through the door in his shorts, laughed loudly, and opened his hands to hug. Chen Jingzai immediately dodged with disgust, and even kicked him rudely. Jingzai. Ling Wuqi looked at him pitifully. Put on your clothes and prepare to eat. Chen Jingzai said indifferently. Oh. Ling Wuqi immediately ran to change clothes. Then he took the hot food and said while eating. At the beginning, he was just trying to cultivate, and he didn't hold any hope. As a result, he only ran the exercises 7 times, and he immediately entered the state. He directly felt the elemental power of earth and water, and his spiritual roots began to tremble. He carefully began to guide vitality into his body. In the end, I just sat like this for most of the day. Now, he has successfully revolved around the sky, and has become a cultivator on the first level of qi training. After winning the double spiritual roots, it was only then that the qi was drawn into the body. It was not even able to turn the Zhoutian around and refine the vitality into spiritual power. Lao Tzu is much stronger than them. Ling Wuqi shouted with a red face, even if it is the 3 of them. What about the fairy bone genius? Aren't 2 of them also practicing qi at the first level? It's just a trick, and it's not a real qualification. It's meaningless to compare like this. Chen Jingzai said indifferently, hurry up and go to get dinner, I'm still hungry. No problem, Ling Wuqi eats cheerfully, I've already practiced 1 level of qi. You must be in Jingzai too, right? Although it's difficult to get started with Yan Gang Ju, it's definitely not difficult for you. It's good to know, don't shout, do you want the immortal master to announce our method? Chen Jingzai said angrily. Ling Wuqi suddenly stopped speaking. He didn't want to be cheap to others. After comforting Ling Wuqi, Chen Jingzai went to dig a pit at night as planned. This time, Ling Wuqi didn't follow him, and he buried himself alone. After cultivating overnight, he entered the 4th level of Qi training very smoothly. This kind of progress is simply incredible. If Master Ge knew about it, he would probably faint. But Chen Jingzai was not satisfied. He keenly found something was wrong. It seems that different soil pits have different effects. At least the second time he cultivated, he just improved his cultivation by 1 level. Last night, he broke through to the 3rd level of Qi training in one breath. In this way, the earth element force contained in each earth pit is not the same. And with the improvement of the cultivation base, the more soil energy is required, the less the improvement will be. The 4th level of Qi training is already at the middle level of the refining realm, reaching the level of a 10th grade immortal seedling. In other words, he is improving 1 level, and he can properly join the immortal sect. However, if you want to get more and perform better, the higher your cultivation, the better. After Chen Jingzai returned to the house, he was not ready to continue practicing. He took out the book of Yan Gangju and began to flip back. In addition to the cultivation technique, Yan Gangju also has a magic technique. Every Kung Fu is like this, there is only one Qi practice. Attached to the rock gang tactic is a soil practice technique. Running on the ground, after using it, the stamina quickly recovers and the speed increases. After completing the cultivation, you can enter the soil below the waist and run quickly. If the opportunity is enough, you can use this to comprehend the art of earth escape. Spell, the art of soil efficacy, physical recovery, speed boost vulnerability, crossing 3 big potholes, running back and forth 55 times. Chen Jingzai looked surprised, but he didn't expect that magic tricks would be able to block bugs. And this bug isn't difficult, it's easy to do. I just don't know how it works. He silently wrote down the technique of earthwork and tried to display it. Unfortunately, his talent in magic was mediocre, and he couldn't succeed at all for the first time. Chen Jingzai gave up quickly. He didn't feel the need to waste time. When the sun shone into the house, Ling Wuqi also ended his cultivation. How do you feel? Chen Jingzai asked. It's great. Ling Wuqi grinned. I don't think it takes a month to successfully enter the 2nd level of Qi training. This method of training is simply amazing. A month? Not bad. Chen Jingzai nodded, with a strange look in his eyes. The 1st level of a month seems to be very fast, but he was promoted to the 3rd level of Qi training in one night. It seems that different exercises, different loopholes, and different efficiency. He didn't break this point, but went to pick up meals with Ling Wuqi. In the next month, Chen Jingzai secretly made rapid progress. After consuming all the dirt pits dug by the old tree roots nearby, he was promoted to the 6th level of Qi training. The technique of soil movement has also been successfully cultivated to perfection. It's a pity that I didn't understand the art of earth escape. It seems that the card bug seems to be only for the spell itself. This month, he also obtained other attributes through Ling Wuqi. Metallicity technique, golden light technique, water attribute technique, rainbow water technique. Wood attribute art, longevity art. Fire attribute art, fire cloud art. All are single attribute techniques, and each technique has its own magic technique. Chen Jingzai began to study these techniques after he entered the 5th stage of Qi training. He doesn't like multi-attribute skills. This is not only the inherent cognition formed long ago, but also the result of talent screening. The single attribute technique has the greatest advantage of being pure. The biggest disadvantage is that it is difficult to get started, and it is not easy to cultivate. But for Chen Jingzai, these are not problems. He can catch loopholes and cultivate quickly. However, this is not the biggest surprise. When he put the 5 Kung Fu formulas together, it happened unexpectedly. Cultivation techniques: Rock Gang Ju, Golden Light Ju, Rainbow Water Ju, Longevity Ju, Fire Cloud Ju. Advantages: the 5 elements are complete, integrated, and the spiritual roots are reshaped. Disadvantage: it is almost impossible to succeed, and there is a great probability of going crazy and dying. Vulnerability: collect 5 elements spirit fruit and 5 elements spiritual jade, which can be practiced in places where the 5 elements are abundant. Chen Jingzai stared blankly at the lines of fonts in front of him. He did not expect that the 5 martial arts can be integrated into one for cultivation. The effect of cultivation is still the most important reshaping of spiritual roots, which is simply against the sky. Unfortunately, he knew how to get stuck, but he couldn't do it. This precondition is too difficult. The 5 elements spiritual fruits are rare, and the 5 elements spiritual jade has never been heard of. Chen Jingzai knew about the land of the 5 elements. I know what it is, but I can't find such a place. Because such spiritual grounds are usually occupied by great forces. It's not easy for people to take advantage of the situation. 5 elements in 1, reshape the spiritual root, reshape the spiritual root. Chen Jingzai swirled his fingers on the Kung Fu formula and whispered softly in his mouth. More than once, he hated that he was not an immortal bone or a heavenly root, and that he hated poor aptitude. Now that there is an opportunity to change his qualifications in front of him, it is really hard for him to let it go. How to do? Do you have to wait until joining Xianzong to plan? If the information inquired is correct, Xianzong is not very peaceful. Inside Xianzong, it's like a martial arts novel. Inside, there is also a party for selfishness, and each other is a group. Every immortal sect has different problems. If you are not qualified enough, you will not be valued. So even if you join the immortal sect, you won't be able to get the 5 elements spirit fruit or spirit jade. Instead, it will be involved in it, and the years will be wasted in vain. Chen Jingzai's goal is very clear, that is, not to waste a single bit of cultivation. Not to mention the way of cultivation, you can strengthen your body, and just controlling your strength is enough to attract people. Not to mention becoming immortal and attaining the Tao, immortal. As a person who has died once, Chen Jingzai has a strong need and paranoia in this regard. He is quite a pure cultivator, not a cultivator who calculates and does not seek to improve. After thinking about it, reading www.youcanshu.com Chen Jingzai found that he had no way out. Joining the immortal sect, I can't be satisfied. Under the current circumstances, he also has no chance to obtain Lingyu and Lingguo. Forget it, let it be. Chen Jingzai sighed softly. He felt that he was bewildered. The most important thing for monks is not to be paranoid and coercive. In fact, he has a special talent, and his future is much stronger than his past. Putting away the strong unwillingness, Chen Jingzai put the remaining skills aside. He was going to get the Yangang Ju to perfection first. Although the roots of the old trees nearby are gone, there are still some by the river. It was nothing more than digging a hole while it was dark. There are still nearly 4 years to go, even if there is no pit card, Chen Jingzai does not feel it is a pity. The interior of Xianzong is complicated, and he has long noticed it. Since he knew this situation, how could he be willing to be the first bird? He decided to put it aside for a while and suspend his cultivation. On the same day, I went to the library of the Xianmiao Academy to look for books that I like to read. He is not alone. In fact, there are quite a few people here in the library. However, they are all like the 5 spiritual roots and the 4 spiritual roots. They came here to give up joining the immortal sect. Read more books to learn your skills. In the library of the Xianmiao Academy, there are all kinds of books, which are very rich. If you are fortunate enough to write down a book that will help you in the future, it may save your life. Even life-changing. So they are so enthusiastic about those who reject homework and don't like reading. Chen Jingzai is a rare THRE lineage immortal seedling. However, he also has the nickname of a bookworm, so it is reasonable to come to the library. No one would say anything, and Chen Jingzai didn't like to communicate, so he enjoyed himself. 2 years later, the library. Chen Jingzai put the book in his hand on the shelf, he twisted his neck, the spiritual power in his body guided Zhou Tian, then strange fluctuations appeared on him, the breath disappeared in an instant. Before and after, a total of 8 years. Chen Jingzai finally went through all the books in the library. He found a lot of good things. For example, the hidden breath technique. For example, the breath awareness technique of finding breath. All in all, some small spells, Chen Jingzai has mastered more than a dozen of them. These little spells are all hidden in books. If there is no special talent, Chen Jingzai will miss it as he did 6 years ago. But now it's different. For example, he just finished reading Fuyuan Guangmiao Mountain People's book. This book is akin to an autobiography and a travelogue. These are some bizarre things that Guangmiaishan people encountered in their travels in the red dust. It recorded some harmful spells and some of his own magic experience. After Chen Jingzai read it, there are 3 spells that can be learned right away from the book. Spell, Sheep Mantra Effect. After use, turn the designated life into a sheep. Disadvantage, the stronger the target's strength, the higher the consumption of spiritual power and the shorter the maintenance time. Vulnerability, it is woven into a loop with sheep fine wool, which can be used to speed up mastery. This is a real spell, not a spell. The cultivator's spiritual power requirements are relatively high, and even if there are loopholes, it is difficult to grasp it instantly. Chen Jingzai felt pretty good, this kind of spell is actually very interesting. Sometimes it may have unexpected effects. Spell, Soul Gathering Efficacy, reciting the 8 characters of the target's birthday can condense the scattered soul. Disadvantage, very low success rate. Vulnerability, you can quickly master it by wearing the ghost wood or reciting the Buddhist scriptures 1,000 times. This spell involves the soul, and Chen Jingzai didn't want to let it go. Don't look down on it, in fact, spells involving souls are very precious. The most important thing is that this is a spell from the Guangmiao Mountain people. It is also matched with the following spells. Spell, Soul Retention Efficacy, after the soul gathering, the soul can be restrained, and the mind can control life and death. Disadvantages, it is detrimental to the soul and wisdom, detrimental to the yin and virtue, and there is a possibility of backlash. Vulnerability, wearing 100-year-old ghost wood, or reciting Buddhist scriptures 100,000 times and Taoist scriptures 10,000 times. In the autobiography of Guangmiao Shanren, he used these 2 spells to punish the wicked and help the good. Don't look at him alone, after mastering the art of confinement, he can call ghost servants. It can be said that it is an excellent spell for walking the world. Chen Jingzai remembered all the specific cultivation methods of the 3 spells. After doing these things, he walked slowly out of the library. Today, 2 years later, there are many more people in the library. They are all radish heads, but they are only 8 or 9 years old. These are the immortal seedlings who came later. They were ignorant and learned along with them. It was no different from Ling Wuokui back then. Chen Jingzai is of course different. He has memories of his past, and he already had a goal at the age of 6. Looking at the books in the library back then, it was like seeing a cat eating food. Seeing them now, Chen Jingzai couldn't help feeling emotional. Jingzai. When Ling Wuokui saw Chen Jingzai, he quickly walked over, a new immortal seedling is coming. What's the fuss about? Chen Jingzai said, every year immortal seedlings come here. This time is different, Ling Wuokui said in a low voice, it is said that it was sent by Ling Yun immortal boat. Ling Yun's Yanzhou. Chen Jingzai looked at him in surprise. Exactly, Ling Wuokui said as he walked side by side with him, the Ling Yun immortal boat of Ling Yun immortal sect can only be owned by immortal masters in the foundation building period, and I heard that the immortal seedlings in the north of Pulau Kingdom were sent. You mean, the royal family? Chen Jingzai asked thoughtfully. There are also some ancient families, Ling Wuqi said in a low voice. Pulau country is respected in the north, and there are many disciples of the royal family, nobles, etc. It is not surprising that some immortal seedlings come out. That's it, Chen Jingzai nodded. When will you arrive? Come on, I heard from Immortal Master Kodeo, there is still a cup of tea, it's here. Ling Wuqi pointed to the sky. The sky is blue, with white clouds, and it is clean. Right at this moment, the 16-meter-long wooden boat quietly penetrated the layers of clouds. It was silent, without the slightest movement, like a giant beast. It appeared in the sky and slowly approached Baiun City from the sky. The ordinary people in Baiun City felt the huge shadow and raised their heads subconsciously. They immediately saw the huge wooden boat. Some people immediately knelt down and called out to the immortal, while some people opened their mouths and did not move. Inside the Xianmiao courtyard, even Chen Jingzai felt his heart surging and his eyes burning hot. He was not an ordinary person without knowledge, but it was the first time he saw a wooden boat that could fly. These methods can no longer be explained by science. This is the world of immortal cultivation, even if it is not the first time to remind myself, but not this time, the impact was more obvious and stronger. Lingyun Immortal Ship, this is the Lingyun Immortal Ship. Ling Wuqi danced beside him. It is said that this is only the basic immortal ship of Lingyun Immortal Sect, but it also has the power of being big and small, capable of flying across the sky, and crossing mountains and rivers with ease. This is the Xianjia method. Ling Wuqi was not the only one shouting at the scene. In fact, these immortal seedlings have been studying in the immortal seedling courtyard since they were 6 years old. Naturally, there is no knowledge. The appearance of Lingyun Immortal Ship made everyone suffer a lot. The difference is, immortal seedlings like Ling Wuqi, who have entered the realm of qi training, are naturally rejoicing. This is because they may also do it in the future. And those immortal seedlings who gave up early, reading www.yuyuganshu.com, or who are still working hard because of poor qualifications, at this time, most of them were like mourning and studying for a concubine, and they were deeply concerned. It's so spectacular. Ling Wuqi watched the giant ship slowly fall from the sky to the Xianmiao courtyard. Jingzai, what do you think of us joining the Lingyun Xian Zone? When the time comes, we will be one by one. You think too much, Chen Jingzai said indifferently. I am waiting for the Thre lineage spiritual route, and it is the immortal sect who chooses us, not the immortal sect. We can't decide where we can go. This is again. Ling Wuqi subconsciously wanted to refute, but quickly woke up. He shuddered instantly and looked at Chen Jingzai with a smirk. In the past 2 years, you have been practicing diligently. You can indeed try to actively choose the immortal sect in the 5th stage of qi training, but are you ready to explain the secrets of your cultivation and break up with me? Chen Jingzai asked. I was wrong, Jingzai. Ling Wuqi immediately begged pitifully for mercy. In 2 years, it was extremely incredible that he could cultivate to the 5th level of qi training. Ling Wuqi knew that without Chen Jingzai's guidance, it would be impossible on his own. You must know that even the 3 geniuses with immortal bones have only practiced the 5th level of qi now. Even so, the 3 geniuses dragged themselves like a bastard. Recently, I formed a gang in the same session of the Xianmiao Academy, and it was a smog. Seeing Chen Jingzai's cold face, Ling Wuqi suddenly stopped talking. Standing quietly beside Chen Jingzai, he looked up at the sky. Something's wrong. Chen Jingzai's expression changed suddenly. What's wrong? Ling Wuqi asked subconsciously. The speed has not changed. If it falls at this speed, the Xianmiao Academy will be impacted. Chen Jingzai's expression suddenly changed. Run, get out of here. Chen Jingzai grasped Ling Wuqi, and subconsciously performed the technique of earthwork. The two disappeared from the spot in an instant. Chen Jingzai, who has already practiced the art of earthwork to perfection, can't see a figure with all his strength. Even with Ling Wuqi, it wouldn't have much impact. But even so, the immortal ship landed too suddenly, without the slightest control. Almost instantly, the immortal ship smashed into the immortal Miao Yuan. Like the top of Mount Tai, meteors fall from the sky. A large number of buildings were smashed, and trees jumped to pieces. The huge airflow directly overturned the ground, and even the bluestone slabs flew out. The ferry ship is out of control. In the Xianmiao courtyard, the immortal masters realized the problem. Looking back again, the immortal seedlings were already screaming and running around. Calm down. Master Ge appeared in the air with a blank expression. His voice, like Hong Zhong de Lu, rang in the ears of the immortals. The immortal seedlings in the Qi training period, take the immortal seedlings who are less than 6 years old to escape first. The rest of the people will leave the ferry ship quickly. The immortal masters of each academy, split half of the rescue immortal seedlings. The rest of the immortal masters, follow me to the immortal ship to check. Immediately after the sound fell, there was a flash of light. Immortal masters cast spells to rescue immortal seedlings, often disappearing in an instant. Master Ge made his move, which undoubtedly brought order to the chaotic scene. The immortal seedlings began to flee quickly. As for the immortal seedlings who couldn't leave, they all turned into a pool of red blood. Not even the bones can be preserved. The immortal ship is so huge, and the force of the bombardment will naturally make them smash to pieces. The immortal seedlings who survived, at this time, felt great happiness in their hearts. No one wants to stay any longer. They can't wait to grow a pair of legs and leave quickly. Chen Jingzai took Ling Wuqi to stand above the house in the distance, watching the place where the ferry ship fell. The 16 Zhangglong immortal boat was directly loaded down. It seems that the immortal master of Foundation establishment encountered a strong enemy. Even if he didn't die, his spiritual power was consumed so much that he could barely maintain his mind. After arriving at the Xianmiao courtyard, I was relieved and couldn't hold on. Chen Jingzai expressed his speculation with a solemn face. That's the Foundation establishment immortal master, what kind of powerful enemies can you meet? Ling Wuqi asked. Who knows? Chen Jingzai shook his head. Anyway, we're fine for now. However, it seems a little early for him to say this. Before the two of them left, they saw Immortal Master Ge and several Immortal Masters suddenly flew away from the immortal ship. They looked ugly, and each brought 2 richly dressed children in gold and silver. Master Ge's face was extremely ugly, and his lips moved slightly. Soon more Immortal Masters flew out, and they rushed to the 4 directions to go to the various immortal seedling courtyards. Immediately afterwards, the vitality of the heavens and the earth changed, and the vitality was extremely dense, condensing like a mist. Then light curtains of various colors appeared quietly, protecting the various immortal seedlings. Master Ge started the formation. Ling Wuqi exclaimed. It seems that things are more difficult than expected. Chen Jingzai's expression sank. The formation of Xianmiao Academy is generally not activated, and even if it encounters an enemy, Master Ge will come forward. In fact, it is impossible for ordinary monks to attack Xianmiao Academy. After all, there are more than a dozen immortal sects in the Pulao country behind the Xianmiao Academy. In 8 years, Chen Jingzai has seen the formation of the formation open once. It was a red flame sand ant outside the city that secretly broke into the Xianmiao Academy and triggered the formation. It was also at that time that Chen Jingzai saw the power of the formation. It is said that the red flame sand ants, which are called ghosts and gods in the desert, were directly crushed into powder by the power of the formation. Master Ge also used these powders to concoct medicated meals for the immortal seedlings in the Qi refining stage. Jingzai, what should we do? Ling Wuqi asked. Don't panic, Chen Jingzai said, the formation won't hurt Xianmiao. Let's go back to the house to clean up, take everything we can with, and find a chance to leave. Leave? Ling Yukui said in shock. It's no longer safe here, Chen Jingzai said, leave first and then. Ling Yukui opened his mouth to speak, but Chen Jingzai grabbed him and jumped away. Spell, light feather efficacy, jumping up and down, as light as a feather. Vulnerability, carrying a rock, climb up the roof and jump down 100 times. This spell is also one of Chen Jingzai's harvests in the library. The stone mentioned by the loophole did not specify how big or heavy it was. Chen Jingzai found 2 pebbles by the river and jumped off the roof 200 times to master them. The 2 quickly returned to the house. Chen Jingzai only took 2 changes of clothes and taels of silver sent from home. He came to Ling Yukui's room. This guy was packing the secrets. These are all gone. Chen Jingzai shook his head and said, let's just avoid danger for the time being. Ling Yukui was a little panicked, and under Chen Jingzai's instructions, he quickly sorted out the package. Then followed Chen Jingzai to the abandoned house. Jingzai, are we really going? Ling Yukui asked in a low voice. A gentleman does not stand under a dangerous wall. Chen Jingzai said, it must be extremely difficult for Master Ge to open the existence of the formation. We are only insignificant immortal seedlings, and the slightest influence will become a powder. Yes, but we never left. Ling Yukui said in a panic. Just leave the Xianmiao Academy and go to the city to find a place to hide. Chen Jingzai's eyes were flat. When the danger is over, let's sneak back, even if the immortal master knows. What is there in Baiyun City? It's just Xianmiaowen. No matter how powerful the enemy is, the Xianmiao Academy will never be able to escape. Trees move to death, people move to live. Chen Jingzai didn't want to throw his life in Xianmiaowen. The road to immortality in this life has just begun, and it is not reckless to live forever without a certificate. The 2 were very familiar with the Xianmiao Academy, and they quickly walked through the dilapidated houses to the river. The best way to leave Xianmiaowen secretly is to go down the river. Reading www.yuyuganshu.com. There are high walls and thorns around the Xianmiao courtyard, and a formation is also arranged. The only way to go down the river is to use the Xianmiao nameplate to sneak away. These are what Chen Jingzai saw in the library. The immortal masters didn't say anything. They all told the Immortal Miao that the Immortal Miao Academy was very safe. How is your mud flow technique? Chen Jingzai asked in a low voice. I'm already very skilled and can use it. Ling Yukui said, lying in the grass. Very good, Chen Jingzai nodded with satisfaction. When we go to dive into the water, you will use the mud flow technique, and we will speed up. What are you pulling me for? Ling Yukui grabbed the corner of Chen Jingzai's clothes and pointed to the sky. Chen Jingzai looked up and saw that the originally clean sky was filled with yellow sand. The gravel is like raindrops, falling from the sky quickly. The colorful formation was like a fake. Are we still going? Ling Yukui asked with a wry smile. See the opportunity. Chen Jingzai pursed his lips. It's best not to use spiritual power, just wait. His heart is sinking, because a shadow appeared in the sky filled with yellow sand. The shadow is hazy, but it is extremely huge, only slightly smaller than the ferry boat. It looks like a humanoid, but has a tail swinging behind it. Every time I shake it, the yellow sand blows harder, and it hurts when a grain of sand hits my body. The king of yellow sand is here. Little girl from Ling Yun sect, hurry up and go back to the bridal chamber with me. These delicious little cuties, this king is welcome. Ha 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 ha. In the wild sand, there was the sound of wild laughter. After the sound landed, the yellow sand rolled and ravaged the Xianmiao courtyard. Chapter 8. Originally, the yellow mist covered the sky, but now the yellow sand is blowing like a tornado. One after another, they raged back and forth in the Xianmiao Academy. Yu Xianmiao couldn't dodge in time and was taken away by Huang Sharon. It disappeared in the blink of an eye, and there was no scream. Even though Master Ge's teeth were about to split, he couldn't do anything. He led the immortal masters who were protecting the brocade-clothed children in front of the immortal ship. A hazy white figure appeared on the ferry ship. King Huangsha, do you want to be the enemy of Ling Yunxianzong? A soft drink showed weakness. This king wants to marry a sweet wife. Being-in-law is not an enemy. Hey, little girl, go back to the cave with this king obediently, and be the wife of this king. Isn't it better to live happily every day than it is now? King Huangsha shouted loudly. Fart. Ge Xianxi had a gloomy expression on his face. You evil people, let's talk nonsense. Ha, King Huangsha sneered, but the juniors in the early stage of foundation building, thought they could stop this king's dafa with the formation? I didn't want to do too much, but now I have to teach a lesson. His words fell, and he suddenly opened his mouth. The scarlet mouth was like a tuyere, and each immortal seedling was swallowed by him. 8 or 9-year-old Xian Miao, in the eyes of King Huangsha, are like desserts. He took a bite one by one, and he ate it happily. When Master Ge saw this, his face was filled with grief and anger. The spiritual energy in his body was agitated, and his face was red with blood. With a flip of his right hand, a fist-sized medicine furnace appeared. Under the infusion of spiritual power, the medicine furnace seemed to be covered with a green flame coat. You monster, die! Master Ge shouted, and the medicine stove in his hand shot out like an arrow. The medicine stove rose against the wind, and the breath was beyond the formation, about 10 feet in size. Seeing that he was about to hit, King Huangsha showed a sneer. He opened his mouth and spit, and a sandstorm burst out. The fine gravel erupted with tyrannical power at this moment. It hit the furnace, and in an instant, the green coat was pierced. The lasing momentum disintegrated instantly, but at this moment, the medicine furnace burst open. The power of the explosion exceeded expectations. It directly split the sandstorm and hit the king of yellow sand. However, King Huangsha was just staggering, nothing happened. Self-exploding spirit weapon. What's the use? The skin isn't broken. The little girl will be the wife of this king, and this king will leave immediately. Otherwise, you won't be able to wait for the people of Ling Yunxianzong, and this king will slaughter Baiyun City. King Huangsha smiled, pointed at the woman of Ling Yunxianzong and shouted. I'll go with you. The female nun of Ling Yunxianzong cried out in grief and indignation. No. Ge Xianxi spurted blood from his mouth, and his eyes showed anger. Needless to say, it would be nice if you could sacrifice me alone. The nun looked miserable, as if she had been appointed. How can you believe what the monsters say? Ge Xianxi shouted. King Huangsha, swear by your bloodline. The female cultivator said. You are not worthy, Huangsha King snorted coldly, there is no choice. The words fell, and he suddenly let out a roar. Soon the rustling voice came from Xian Miaowen. On the edge of the river, to Wu Kui's horror, he found that the grains of yellow sand began to tremble. And it quickly split open, crawling out of brown rice bugs. It's a sand-eating gu larva. Chen Jingzai said in a deep voice. He did not expect that the yellow sand king was proficient in gu dao techniques. This sand-eating worm is a common worm in the desert. Living in the desert stretches out, feeds on moist gravel, and is extremely docile. Now it has been cultivated into a gu worm, but it is extremely fierce and has changed. In Guangmiao Shanren's travel journal, he had seen cruel descriptions of sand-eating worms. In fact, this can no longer be called a sand-eating worm. They should be called flesh-devouring gu worms. They feed on flesh and blood, and they like flesh and blood with rich spiritual energy. What should I do? Ling Yukui wanted to cry without tears. Don't move, Chen Jingzai said, run the breathing technique I taught you. Ling Yukui obeyed the words, and immediately activated the hidden breath technique, and the breath immediately began to dissipate. Like Chen Jingzai, he was motionless, like a stone. And sure enough, the sand-eating larva broke out quickly, but ignored the two of them. They devoured each other, grew rapidly, and gave birth to a pair of wings as thin as cicada wings. Then they formed a group and began to pounce on the immortal seedlings. In the blink of an eye, Xian Miao became a pile of bones. Do not. Seeing this situation, the female nun of Ling Yun Xianzong shouted miserably, I'll go with you. She mustered up her spiritual power and flew out directly. Just as Master Ji was about to stop him, he saw densely packed sand-eating worms flying towards him. He immediately cast a spell to dodge, and at the same time asked the other immortal masters to leave with the immortal seedlings. Ha 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 ha! King Huangsha grabbed the nun of Ling Yun Xianzong who came out through the barrier. A cheerful and smug laughter came out of his mouth, and the sound was extremely harsh. Let them go. The nun of Ling Yun Xianzong said. Don't worry. Beauty. After King Huangsha finished speaking, he grabbed the Xian Miao Academy with his palm. The sand-eating worm swarm quickly assembled and rushed directly to the formation barrier. They gathered together, like a brown cloud, quickly gnawing at the formation barrier. With just the effort of making a cup of tea, the enchantment couldn't hold on, revealing a flaw. King Huangsha's eyes flickered coldly, and he shot at the flaw from the air. I saw an illusory cocky fist condensed and hit the formation barrier with a bang. Afterwards, the Huang Sharon scrolls that remained in the Xian Miao courtyard quickly condensed. All combined into one, turned into a huge super yellow salon volume. What are you going to do? Seeing this, the nun immediately screamed and asked. Don't worry, Huangsha King smiled, before you leave, you must take some rations with you. After he finished speaking, he controlled the super yellow salon scroll and went back and forth in the Xian Miao courtyard. Some houses were the first to be damaged, and the immortal seedlings hidden in them were swept away. Then the direction changed, and Yu Kanshu www.yuyuganshu.com rushed over along the river. Not good. Chen Jingzai's complexion changed, and he grabbed Ling Yukui to perform the technique of earthwork. He rushed directly into the river, trying to use the river to avoid the super yellow salon roll. But that super yellow salon roll is not only amazing in destructive power, but also unexpected in its swallowing power. Chen Jingzai only had time to throw Ling Yukui out, and he was sucked in. Ling Yukui was thrown into the distance, and immediately fainted. Even though Ji Xianxi was injured, he still encouraged all the immortal masters to resist. The power of the formation emerged again, and before it was about to be repaired, the super yellow salon was broken open. A strong yellow sandstorm broke out in the Xian Miao courtyard. Then, outside the Xian Miao courtyard, the ghost shadow disappeared. Inside the Xian Miao courtyard, there was a mess, bones were piled up, and blood was flowing, like an azura hell. Dean. The remaining immortal masters gathered around with the surviving immortal seedlings. I'm fine, you don't have to worry. The various hospitals began to count the immortal seedlings and treat the surviving immortal seedlings. Vice President, come with me, go to the hall, and light the incense. The Yellow Sand Demon King, who dares to invade my Baiun city, must pay the price. Master Ge gritted his teeth and said. Everyone agreed and started to act. Although this time was robbed, the spirits of the immortal masters were not lost. The root cause is that the Xian Miao Academy is the Xian Miao Academy of more than a dozen immortal sects. King Huangsha dared to attack Baiun city, and even kidnapped the female cultivator of Ling Yun Xianzong. No matter what kind of support there is, it will definitely usher in Xianzong's thunder method. Under the thunder, everything collapsed. They waited to see the death of King Huangsha, and when the time came, they drank blood and peeled off their skins to avenge this. Baiun City, howling. Although the Xian Miao Academy was hit hard, the residents of Baiun City also suffered countless casualties. To mortals, the gravel of the Yellow Sand Demon King is more terrifying than the poisonous rain. The house was smashed into a sieve by the gravel, and some mortals suffered the same misfortune. The flesh and blood were blurred, the flesh and blood were separated, and the state of death was extremely tragic. The Demon King is rampant, never scruples, and acts recklessly, comparable to natural disasters. After the yellow sand passed, the city was already crying. In the Xianmiao courtyard, Master Ji has no regard for the lives of those mortals. After counting, the immortal seedlings lost more than 13,400 people this time. Among them, there are many immortal seedlings who have entered the qi refining period. Either they were taken away by Huang Sharon, or they were eaten by sand-eating worms. The worst thing is that some of the children brought by the female cultivator of Lingyun Xianzong also disappeared. Master Ji was so angry that he felt extremely distressed. He didn't even have time to take a bath. He brought 7 immortal masters to the hall and invited out the fragrance of immortals. The name of incense attracts immortals, and it is naturally extraordinary. This incense is among the second-grade wonders. After being ignited, the fragrance escapes into the void. It can appear in Xianzong in an instant, attracting the attention of the real person of Xianzong. This thing is precious, and it has never been used since it was rewarded. This time, it was the first time. Yingxiangxiang is milky white, and the chopsticks are thin and long. After Master Ji ignited it with spiritual power, it automatically floated in the void. Between the breaths, a third of it has burned out. The smoke was misty, escaping into the void, and soon there were subtle fluctuations. Bunch of white clouds and mists condensed and appeared in the sky above Yingxiangxiang. There were a total of 12 groups. After they appeared, more than half of the incense was burned. Ji Hung grew from the Xianmiao Academy in Baiyun City. I respectfully invite the Immortal Master to come. Half an hour ago, Baiyun City was poisoned by the Yellow Sand Demon King. Xianmiao suffered more than 10,000 casualties, and Fairy Miaoun of Lingyun Xianzong was kidnapped by the Yellow Sand Demon King. Ji urges Immortal Xianzong to call the shots for me. Ji Hung grew, with 7 immortal masters, knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Yin Xianxiang and cried. If you want to deal with the Demon King, you have to take action from a real person. The Foundation Establishment Cultivator is not an opponent at all. If you come, you will die. Ji Hung grew himself was a cultivator in the early stage of foundation building, so he naturally understood this. But he also thought that he couldn't stop the Yellow Sand Demon King, and also thought of the miserable scene outside. The mind of Harbinger immediately collapsed, and the unavoidable emotions erupted. At this time, the cloud of Yin Xianxiang fluctuated. The two figures began to condense, and there appeared a man and a woman wearing Taoist robes. As soon as these two came out, the incense of the immortals was completely burned out. Yun Tuan disappeared, but Master Ji showed a happy expression. Quickly clean the house and clean the platform. Welcome to Lingyun Xianzong and Luo Shengjian School's Real Dharma Drive. When the two real people came, the danger of Baiyun City was resolved, and the Yellow Sand Demon King could not escape. Master Ji was ecstatic and quickly made arrangements. The real person is coming, so don't neglect him. He made a mistake this time, and he must make up for it. Otherwise, after years of planning, wouldn't it be all over in one go? Now that there is a chance to remedy it, he doesn't want to miss it. Outside Baiyun City, there is a sea of sand. Ordinary mortals would never enter it, it would be tantamount to seeking death. It is precisely because of this support that Baiyun City is able to settle down. But he didn't want to. In the Sand Sea, a Demon King emerged. After the Yellow Sand Demon King left Baiyun City, he flew back to the Sand Sea. The demon body shrank, and the Yellow Sand Demon King became the size of a normal man. The dense scales wrap the thick and long tail, and the feet are still in the form of demons. Starting from the waist, it is no different from ordinary people. With his left hand holding Miao Yun's arm, he stepped on the yellow sand and directly escaped into the ground. Miao Yun fainted long ago because her spiritual power was exhausted. There was no response at all. A layer of cocky light enveloped the yellow sand demon king and walked under the sandy seabed. The speed is extremely fast, far surpassing Chen Jingzai's earthwork technique. In just one stick of incense, there was a change ahead. A brown cave suddenly appeared, and the yellow sand demon king laughed and escaped directly into it. This is the yellow sand cave, but it was not opened by the yellow sand demon king. It is a rare natural blessed land where the congenital earth veins are condensed. Inside the cave, there is not a sky full of yellow sand, but a paradise. Not only does the underground river flow, but the 4 seasons are like spring, with flowers and trees flourishing. And the cave is huge. The further inwards, the more strangely shaped stalactites. Not to mention the different colors, the hole is not small, and the links are different. Little ones, this king is back. The yellow sand demon king shouted. On the rock wall, there was a rustling sound from the openings of large and small holes. Soon some palm-sized, brown lizards, geckos, and scorpions crawled out. Dense, more and more. There are even more red flame sand ants, desert blood mosquitoes, and psychedelic sand snakes. Like the subordinates of the yellow sand demon king, they stopped at the entrance of the cave one after another, watching the return of the yellow sand demon king. The yellow sand demon king was in a good mood, holding Miaoun's body and walking into the cave. "Congratulations, Your Majesty, come back victorious." A hoarse voice sounded abruptly. In front of the huge cave, the half-human, half-snake demon said. She is a female psychedelic sand snake, manifesting mortal features from the waist up. I don't know which unlucky person I saw, and took this shape. Although there are a pair of giant peaks, their appearance is mediocre. Her voice was even more hoarse, without the gentleness of a woman at all. Ha ha ha, this king will never fail when he goes out. The yellow sand demon king said with a smile. Your Majesty has boundless supernatural powers, Shia said. If there is only this woman, it will disappoint people. I will never forget you. The yellow sand demon king laughed. You reading www.youcanshu.com and then opened his mouth and spit. The yellow sand blew, and in the rotation, one after another immortal seedlings fell in the yellow sand. Everyone was brown and lethargic, including Chen Jingzai. Your Majesty's yellow sand dafa is really amazing. Shia praised. That's nature, said the yellow sand demon king proudly. Although this king is a mortal species, he has a chance. He has his own mysterious dafa in his body. How can he take this king in the mere Baiun city? Your Majesty. Shea flattered. The yellow sand demon king was complacent and proud. He waved his hand to summon his subordinates, and transported the immortal seedlings into the cave. The immortal seedlings were unconscious. But after Chen Jingzai came out, he woke up soon and heard the words of the yellow sand demon king. He had been inhaled by the super yellow salon roll before, and he realized that something was wrong. He deliberately followed the eye-closing fetal breathing technique described by Guang Miao Shanren, holding his breath and isolating his breath. In this way, the feeling of dizziness caused by Huangsha Dafa is greatly reduced. This is not a spell, but a little trick of spiritual power. So even if it was the yellow sand demon king in person, he didn't find it. He was carried by a 7-foot-long lizard and entered the dark cave. Inside the cave, it is relatively dry and ventilated. Like other immortal seedlings, Chen Jingzai was directly thrown to the ground. He secretly calculated that there are more than 30 immortal seedlings in this cave. Each of them is about the same size as him, and it seems that the yellow sand demon king is stored separately in an orderly manner. Thinking of this, Chen Jingzai inevitably felt a little sadness in his heart. From being a high-ranking immortal seedling who could win the fairy tale, to now it has become a ration for monsters. This kind of experience, even he is a bit unbearable. Chapter 10 In the dark cave, Chen Jingzai lay motionless on the rocky ground. When the first immortal Miao woke up with a sound, he opened his eyes slightly. Where is this place? My spiritual power has been sealed. Woo 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 woo. We were captured by monsters. Are you going to be eaten by monsters? 32 immortal seedlings, wailing, began to mourn. No matter what, they are only teenagers. Although Pulokuo said that they could get married when they were 12 years old, they usually became adults at the age of 16. Therefore, immortal seedlings the size of Chen Jingzai are actually teenagers. They grew up in the Xianmiao Academy, and they had no knowledge of the world outside. She has not suffered any hardships, so she is naturally weak. Not to mention being caught by a monster, even a base-building cultivator. I'm afraid he will feel despair in his heart, right? Of course Chen Jingzai didn't cry, he sat cross-legged in the corner, silently running his spiritual power. Perhaps it was because of the fetal breathing trick, his spiritual power was not completely sealed. Of course, it is also possible that the breath-holding technique made Huangsha King look down on him. Although he only has the spiritual power of the third level of Qi training, Chen Jingzai can mobilize it freely. Seal, Qi binding magic efficacy, constrain vitality, ban spiritual power, and demonic evil intentions. Vulnerability, 365 times of continuous operation. Chen Jingzai did not expect that even the seal of the Yellow Sand Demon King had loopholes. I was very surprised in my heart, so I silently sat in the corner and ran the Kung Fu trick. Judging from the spiritual power he can mobilize at the third level of Qi training, it takes 1 hour to run 36 weeks. In other words, in about 11 hours, he will be able to break the seal. Chen Jingzai didn't think he could escape by breaking the seal. But after breaking the seal, at least there is no restraint, and he can use his power. Time passed bit by bit. The immortal seedlings in the cave gradually collapsed from wailing to crying and shouting. A fairy seedling stepped out of the cave, but was directly swallowed by a huge lizard in the dark. The lizard was 10 feet long, and its whole body was integrated with the surrounding environment. Quietly crawls on the wall outside the cave entrance. As long as Xian Miao dared to go out, there would be no bones left that could swallow Xian Miao with one tongue roll. This scene frightened the remaining immortal seedlings, and they didn't even cry. Only some sobbing in the dark. This kind of scene happens from time to time in many nearby caves. Thousands of immortals from the Immortal Miao Academy have all become the rations stored by the Yellow Sand Demon King. Most of these immortal seedlings successfully inhaled qi into their bodies, which is extremely delicious in the eyes of the Demon King. Inside the cave, a huge cave hall. The Yellow Sand Demon King was half lying on the stone bed, his grey-brown pupils stared at Miao Yun. A vine hangs down from the top, directly binding Miao Yun in the air. There are several half-shaped monsters on both sides, drinking and eating meat. He drank Ling Tong blood brew and ate delicious fairy seedlings. It is a pleasure to eat and drink. All of them looked at Miao Yun with a smile, and there was no concealing the greed in their eyes. Miao Yun, marrying this king and becoming this king's wife will not wrong you. The 9,000 demon soldiers in the cave, the 10 commanders, will all obey your orders. At that time, you will be the first person under me. The entire Sand Sea is our chassis. The Yellow Sand Demon King said in a rough voice, exuding a strong aura. In this breath, the monsters that gnawed on the bones of the legs all stopped and did not move. Miao Yun was bound and suspended in the air, and the whole person was extremely uncomfortable. Hearing this, he sneered, humans and monsters have different paths, let this heart die. Not to mention that the other party is a demon, his body stinks, and his demonic aura is unpleasant to smell. Just the scene of eating the fairy seedlings made her teeth split. How to give in? She wanted to kill the Yellow Sand Demon King, how could she agree? You figured it out, the Yellow Sand Demon King said coldly, this king has captured thousands of immortal seedlings. If you don't agree, I will swallow dozens of people a day. Do you want to watch them get eaten? Shameless! Miao Yun cried out in grief. Submit to this king and be this king's wife, the Yellow Sand Demon King Chenzu said, enter the bridal chamber with this king, and then Xian Miao's life and death will be decided by you. Don't even think about it. Miao Yun called out. She didn't lose her mind, so how could she listen to the words of the Yellow Sand Demon King? Monsters are never credible and have no morals. She was behind bars, and she had long put her life and death aside. It was a success to get the Yellow Sand Demon King to withdraw from the Xian Miao Academy. As for the remaining fairy seedlings, she has long regarded them as dead. Then, what is there to say? Stubborn, the Yellow Sand Demon King snorted coldly, Xia, let me make it for you. Within 3 days, I need her to voluntarily enter the bridal chamber with this king. Respect your majesty. Xia dragged the snake's body and twisted out. She waved a jet of black light and cut the vine directly. With a wave of his hand, an invisible force held up Miaoun. Then, she left in such a slow manner and headed to her own snake cave. Bad luck! The Yellow Sand Demon King burst into anger and smashed the stone table in front of him into pieces. It's just a mere human woman, why should the king be angry? A lizard demon said. That's right, if the king wants a woman, let's rob a group together. Yu Yao agreed. What do you know? The Yellow Sand Demon King snorted coldly, if it's an ordinary human woman, what's the use? She's a female cultivator of Lingyun Xianzong, and it fits my Dafa best. Lingyun Immortal Sect. Several commanders looked at each other in dismay, and were suddenly terrified. What? Are you afraid? The Yellow Sand Demon King stared at them with an unkind expression. Your Majesty, Lingyun Immortal Sect is the top immortal sect in Pulao Nation, said a monster dragging its tail. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. If Xianzong is disturbed, will we be in danger? Dangerous. King Huangsha laughed, let's talk about it when they find the cave. It is born with a great chance and understands that the cave is a natural blessed land. As long as there is no problem with the earth's pulse, the blessed land will become a world of its own and cannot be discovered. This is also the source and reliance of its dare to take action against Baiun City. Otherwise, even if he ate gentian, he wouldn't dare to attack Baiun City. The immortal sect of the Pulao country is famous, but it is not blown out. That is the accumulation of countless monsters with flesh and blood. Even in the Sand Sea in a remote place, the king of Yellow Sand has heard of it. When the demons heard the words, they all laughed, and they no longer had any worries. Continuing to drink blood and eat meat, the smell mixed with complex demonic aura recklessly came out. Snake Cave. It is not as dry and slightly damp as other caves. Miaoun breathed gently, silently looking at the dim cave. Turning a blind eye to the psychedelic sand snake slowly crawling on the wall. Xia casually threw her on the stone bed, and immediately a psychedelic sand snake climbed up. They were entrenched on Miaoun's limbs, and even slowly crawled on her. Don't think of using this method to make me submit. Miaoun said with a pale face. You cultivators, are you all equally ruthless? Xia came to her and asked. Xiandao is precious. Miaoun said indifferently. The hideous and ugly psychedelic sand snakes gradually covered her, and hundreds of them were swimming. Life. Xia's fingers landed on her face, steal your life, or give up your life. Miaoun couldn't answer, because at this moment her eyes were empty and she fell into an illusion.